We have a trade deal with Vietnam.
Yes.
Yay. So
Good.
we're all waiting for.
Wait,
this.
what is the deal? What's the
He
deal?
should have said good morning to start it. Good morning. Trade deal with Vietnam.
Thank you for your attention in this matter.
It actually is kind of significant because China's used Vietnam as a shipping point. So to avoid stuff in the past, they've shipped a lot of stuff through Vietnam. But it's 20% on goods from Vietnam into America, 40% on trans-shipped goods. And then America has full access to the Vietnamese market, which I don't know how much that actually means, but apparently it does have some kind of effect for
buy some airplanes
cars.
or something. Yeah,
Cars,
might buy some
yeah.
airplanes. Hey, you know what? If the result of all of this is that the tariffs become a brilliant negotiating tool to actually facilitate free trade, then fantastic. I'll be very pleased if that is the outcome from this. The rhetoric around it did not indicate that was going to be it, but if that's where they wind up, great.
Yeah, well, I think that all remains to be seen. We will. Also, when things get settled, we have no guarantee that they are actually going to be settled.
We've got a couple of tariff videos waiting in the can at Reason, and somebody was like, well, what if they don't come up again? And I was like, I have faith in our commander-in-chief over the next 3 years to at some point threaten tariffs again. I think they'll come up. I think we'll get to use our funny new tariff in town Western sketch.
I think that will be able to come out of the can. Yes. I don't know. I'm just looking at like the dollar has been tanking the last few months. And then as the big, beautiful bill moves forward and we're going to explode our debt, like my biggest concern is that other countries are going to just stop buying our debt and stop trusting us economically because we're giving them a lot of reasons to stop seeing us as a safe haven. So I just I don't know. I can't get excited about a trade deal with Vietnam when I see the bigger picture.
It's amazing that people on the left side of the aisle have any concern about the national debt now. I hope that stays around. Because they've not had any concern about the national debt in my lifetime. Post Clinton for sure.
I guess. I don't know. I don't like when we divide everyone into left and right because it's, I don't know.
I mean, sure. All right, Obama.
I don't know.
I
don't know.
understand.
I just don't know who the fuck you're talking about. Are you talking about
not
me?
all leftists? I mean, generally, if we're going to use it as a shorthand for blocks, word clouds of political thought, the national debt was usually something that was looked at as a cudgel to beat back progressive policies. It was a scaremongering tactic that the rich class used to put their thumb on the underclass. And so progressives and leftists in general have not really talked a lot about the national debt. I think that it is something that's important. I agree with you. I'm glad that it is being used more freely as a way to beat Trump up. And I just hope it stays around.
I mean, I guess as a Congress watcher and someone who's read the bills, I just don't think that perception matches reality because the Inflation Reduction Act came closer to balancing the budget. Clinton was the one who had it, I just feel like it's the Republicans that explode the debt and the Democrats, at least in practice, make it a little better. So to brand the leftists or whatever as the ones that don't care about the debt, I just don't think it's fair. I think politically, you're right. If you're talking about rhetoric, but in action,
that's what I'm talking about. Yeah.
But I think action should matter in these conversations. And in action, the Democrats have been better than the Republicans. They just have.
I don't know. I don't know.
I think Jen's actually right about that. Rhetorically, yes, the Republicans talk about it more. But if we're looking at things, I agree. I don't want to split this into left and right. I want to split it into people that are fiscally prudent and people that are fiscally irresponsible. Now, generally, whoever's in power is fiscally irresponsible, and whoever's out of power is the person saying they want to be fiscally prudent. You'll generally find the rhetoric tracks whoever doesn't have power that actually gives a shit about the debt. Yeah. And then the second they get into power, they quit giving a shit about the debt. That being said, though, the only periods that we've had where spending or the deficit have stalled have generally been when there's a Democrat in the White House and a mixed Congress. That's when the deficit tends to slow down. And the periods that it's ramped up the most in the last few years were under George W. Bush and then under Trump. It's gone up under every president. but it went up the most under George W. Bush and then again under Trump. So I don't really care whether you're a Democrat or a Republican. I talk about the debt almost as much as I talk about zoning, and I welcome anybody to the fold that wants to try to get it under control.
That was my point. And by the way, I did not say Republican and Democrat. I said left and right, that to generally understand where conversations are going.
But I think if you're talking about the two parties, who's left and who's right?
I'm not talking about the two parties. You are talking about the two parties.
But this is why those terms, I think, don't mean anything, because like the two parties are the ones in power. And so if you're saying like the left doesn't care, like I'm thinking Democrat when you say it.
Okay,
so that's why I hate.
You're allowed to think Democrat when I say that.
Well,
I'm
it means
talking
that I'm
about the larger
misunderstanding
conversation
you then.
in liberal circles and conservative circles.
Justin, I think where you've got a point is if we really want to get granular here and draw a delineation between liberals and leftists do tend to not be very concerned with the deficit. So you find that folks that are in the AOC camp tend to err more into modern monetary theory. And so they do tend to, that does not tend to be a priority for AOC side of it. But the rest of the Democratic Party, like the liberal side, like the Ezra Kleins of the world, they're more worried about this now.
Now, yes, I'm saying it's rising. I don't know why this became a controversial thing. I don't know what got triggered here. I'm saying it's a good thing that people are talking more about it.
It's a very good thing, and it's also a weird thing in that rhetorically, and I think that this is bullshit what I'm about to say, but rhetorically, for most of my life, the Democrats were thought to be the party of peace, and the Republicans were thought to be the party of fiscal rectitude. And it's wrong on both counts. The Democrats were opposed to war until they got an opportunity to vote on it, and then they would enthusiastically vote on it, but they were rhetorically in favor of peace. And then the Republicans were rhetorically in favor of the deficit until they got an opportunity to spend money on shit they wanted. I think that rhetorical like default cultural value that we attribute to both parties is kind of up in the air now, where it might be that, you know, in 10 years, we think of the Democrats as the fiscal party and we think of Republicans as the non-interventionist party. It's possible they're going that direction.
I would be, I mean, I don't know. I do wonder about the coalition, the new coalition of, all of American politics, because it is clearly shifted on the right. I think it is shifting on the left. And the question is, how do you harness your a very fired up progressive wing, not alienate them, but also make room for some of these suburbanites that have come into the tent over the last, 10 years that aren't necessarily they are more into the idea of fiscal prudence or tax cuts or something like that.
That's going to be the question, right? That's the question is, do you want the Democrats to be a big tent that brings in the never-Trumpers and the moderates, or do you want the Democrats to double down on Mamdani? And there are going to be some fault lines there.
Yeah, we will talk about Mamdani a little bit later. Do we have any big holiday plans?
I'm going to try and get back on the volleyball court, but I had to have another mole removed, and it's like it's a big one, and so I have to take a week off and play. So I've been super annoyed. So if I'm a little bitchy today, it's because I haven't been able to do anything for a week.
You've been all cooped up.
I mean, sort of. The problem is that I played in a volleyball tournament on Saturday because I was already signed up for it. And so it's like I made it worse. And so now I'm just kind of sitting here. So I went to the gym. I can do some things, but I'm not doing the one thing that I moved here for and that I love.
You know what's weird? I also had a mole and it was driving me nuts, but just a little bit of dynamite. And I was able to kill that fucker. And the yard is mine again.
Well, that's exactly what I was talking about. Mm-hmm.
From Austin, Texas, my name is Justin Robert Young from Southern California.
My name is Jennifer Rainey.
And from America's capital, Washington, D.C.
I'm Andrew Heaton.
And we're not wrong on this edition of the program. We're going to be talking about the record low in American pride, as well as Texas's weed fight that continues to sprawl out through the Lone Star State. All that and your emails. Heaton, it was great seeing you over the weekend.
It was really fun. For listeners, I was in Austin. I dipped in because our good friend Brian Brushwood was doing a symposium. So I was able to jump in and participate in that and jump out. It was really, really good to be back. It was nice to see everybody. I was tight on time. So anybody in Austin hearing this, please don't be offended if I wasn't able to see you. But I was able to do the Wizard Academy Friday night, which is my spiritual home on Friday evenings, and see yourself and the great Tom Merritt and Brian Brushwood and Matt Donnelly and several other really cool people. Met a lot of a few of my patrons that came that are now Brian acolytes. And was also able to do some go-karting because my friend Jake had a birthday on Saturday evening. So did some go-karting. It was a fun time. It was a very,
you
very good
blew
trip.
my mind that the go-kart place didn't have AC.
That's
insane.
okay. I didn't.
That's
okay.
illegal.
Not only was that so crazy, K1 go-karting in North Austin doesn't have air conditioning. And I wasn't even mad. I was opportunistic because I talked to them. I was like, hey, it's hot in here. They're like, yeah, some guy stole copper from the roof. We haven't had air conditioning in a year and a half. And I'm like, thank you, 17-and-a-half-year-old. Is there an adult I can speak to about this of why you haven't had air conditioning in fucking Texas in a year and a half? And they're like, yeah, it's just how the wind blows. And I'm like, well, I'm feeling kind of lightheaded. I sure hope I don't crash my go-kart and injure myself and own all of you. There's a really good liability case percolating here. If there's any attorneys in Texas that would like to team up with me, I do. I think, you know what? Actually, I did crash into somebody. My neck hurts a little bit. So maybe
feeling a little whiplashy.
That was because the heat made me not safe.
And there was a very cute moment. Heaton played peekaboo with my daughter, Bella.
I came around on her.
Adorable.
It was a good moment. Justin and I snuck away to go get a beer. And I was like, Justin, I've come around on your daughter. Because I'd resented her. I'd resented Bella for taking our karaoke room. Every time I'd see her, I'd kind of like squint at her. But hanging out with her and playing peekaboo with her, I'm like, okay, she's a good kid. I like her. Fine. It only took me about 10 months. I'm on Team Bella now. I've come around.
She's extremely
finally
cute.
Bury the hatchet.
Yeah.
Her first feud.
But the great thing will be like when she graduates high school, you know, I'll come in, I'll have the bullhorn and the bell and all that. And then afterwards we all go out for pizza. I'll be like, hey, Bella, come here. When we first met, I didn't like you, but I've really come to appreciate the fine young woman you've turned into.
She always smiled at me. We've been buddies since the beginning.
I can't wait for her Wikipedia that lists her public feuds and age 0. Political satirist Andrew Heaton.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about the good old US of A. Or is it? In Gallup's June 2025 survey, just 36% of Democrats and 92% of Republicans said they were extremely or very proud to be an American. A 56-point partisan gulf that is the widest measured in the quarter century that the question has been asked and caps a long trend of pride falling very sharply among Democrats while holding near 90% among Republicans. Jen Briney, are you proud to be an American? And either way, why?
I mean, this feels like a question where I'm going to get in trouble.
No, I mean, if the answer is no, then you very much fit in with a large swath of the country.
Here's how I feel about it. There was a show called Shameless. Did you boys watch it?
No.
Okay. So it was a story about a family and the parents were addicts. They were a mess. The family was poor. They did terrible things in order to survive, but they also were a really strong family. They loved each other. They had each other's back. I kind of feel like Fiona Gallagher, where it's like, I love my family. I love my United States. It's my home. I will always love it. But I'm really ashamed of our behavior. You know, like we have all these wars, especially in my adult lifetime, where we've killed so many people essentially for profit. Right now, we're supporting Israel with their shameless land grab. They're trying to steal all the land in Gaza and killing people. Some people call it a genocide, which, you know, the international community calls that accurate. We're sabotaging the global climate efforts. There's so many people all over the world that have been like working together, and there's countries that are trying to do all these things, and then we are just producing the most fossil fuels. We're rolling back all the climate initiatives that we have. Like, I just feel super guilty about that. And then when I just look at like the people we're electing, like at one point America used to be cool. You know, like our president Bill Clinton with the saxophone, like we were electing cool people. There's nothing cool about Donald Trump and the people that are around him. You know, the person I think of the most, remember Rudy Giuliani with his like head melting off. It's just our popularity contest has now even become the worst. And it's like, so while I do love the country, am I proud? Like, am I going to go to Europe this fall dressed head to toe in American flag stuff? Like, no, I'm not, because I think that would be kind of dangerous to do at this point. But B, I'm also just like not proud of our behavior in the world, especially in recent years. And when I look at what these stats are, looking at like 90% of Republicans are just reflexively saying that they're proud to be American. Like, I see that as a problematic lack of shame. I think it's kind of the heart of the problem with the Republican Party, because I feel like shame is what leads to improvement. So when I'm ashamed of my personal behavior, that's when I go and I apologize and I try and be better. And so if you're not ashamed of our bad behavior, you don't strive to be better. And I think this is how you end up where we currently are. I don't think that it's a virtue to be proud regardless of behavior. And so am I proud to be an American? I'm not going to say that I'm not going to be one of those assholes that goes and wears a Canadian flag when I'm not. I'm not going to pretend that I'm not a part of this community, but I'm not proud of us. And I do think there's a distinction there. But I think at this point, like if I was asked that question in a survey, I'd be one of those people that's leaning no. I'm ashamed of too many of our actions.
Mr. Andrew Heaton.
I don't like the question. I don't like the word pride. This is largely coming from my Christian roots in Middle America. So I want to stress this, probably terminological what I'm about to say. Mm-hmm. C.S. Lewis in Mere Christianity talks about healthy patriotism as being akin to loving a family, kind of what Jen was talking about, and that you can be proud of your family, be proud to be a Young or a Briney, and be happy to be a part of that family without necessarily looking down on other countries other families or feeling that you're better than them or thinking that you are going to do worse if they're doing better, something like that. So that's kind of how I understand patriotism, is it's love of country. It's not necessarily pride. I also the word pride kind of irks me because pride makes me think of I'm trying to derive status or I'm trying to derive accomplishment from group identity. And that kind of weirds me out on an individualistic level. Like years ago, weirdly, I was at Fox Business having a beer with none other than Gavin McInnes of Proud Boys, who is not yet persona non grata. And he said, white men built this country. And my response was, hey, thanks. I just got here. I didn't have anything to do with that. I'm not taking any credit for it, nor am I taking any criticism for it. I just got here. So I don't really feel pride or shame in the country. And I don't think that I would particularly alter that trajectory regardless of who's in office or what we were doing. But that could be terminological, because questions that would work better for me if you were doing a Pew survey that I would have an easier time answering would be, are you glad to be an American? The answer is a resounding yes. Do you get excited about American stuff like fireworks and music and jet skis? Yes, I think they're awesome. I really enjoy them. Do you love America? Yes. Do you think America's mostly good or mostly bad? I think America's mostly good. Are you ashamed or embarrassed to be American? No. So it might be terminological in terms of what I'm saying. But the question of do you take pride in a nationality or group identity, the word pride is kind of what weirds me out.
Do you have, let me just ask you, do you have a problem with the term pride for like Pride Month that we just got out of here in June for LGBTQIA plus community?
No, but I don't think I would describe myself as proud to be friends with the LGBTQ. I don't know. I defer to both of you. Do I use the word pride very much? Do I say I'm a proud whatever? Maybe I might. Maybe I do and I don't know it.
I haven't tracked it. I don't know you as like the pride guy.
But you know what? What I do find really interesting about this question, though, is what I immediately got curious about, I looked at the data. It's interesting because, as you point out, Justin, it's like 92% of Republicans are very excited to be American. They didn't go that far down either when Biden was in office. It was like maybe a 5 to 7 point jump.
Nor did the opposite. Like the Democrats didn't have like a gigantic spike. That's what I found interesting. Yeah,
they were high under Obama. It was like maybe 85% or something like that. It was lower than Republicans, but pretty high. It dropped precipitously when Trump came in, and then it went up to like 60% when Biden was in, and then it went back down again. So there is a difference there. What I wanted to be curious about is what do other countries think? And it turns out there is a thing called the World Values Survey that's been going on roughly the same amount of time that Pew question's been going on. And I found that fascinating because when you start looking at other countries, they're the ones that we would consider in our peer group are very similar. When you look at Western liberal countries, in the survey that I'm looking at, it's a little bit different. America ranked, when asked, are you proud of your nationality or do you take pride in your nationality? Something very comparable to the question that was posed in the Pew survey. America had 45.6%, very low. France had 47%. Denmark had 47%. The United Kingdom had 39.7%. Japan 32%. Germany 27%. And the Netherlands 25%. You get into like Canada 50%. So like a 3-point difference. So I look at that and go, well, it doesn't appear that all of these other countries have the same gripes with their government than we do. So something else is going on here. And when I looked at other countries that scored very high, they had a very different set going on. Like India and Pakistan were both like 70 and 80%. Very excited to be Indian, very excited to be Pakistani. Iran, 83%, Iraq, 63%, Mexico, 72%.
We need to play more cricket.
Here's what I think's going on. I think that Western liberal democracies in general, and the Republicans are a very big contravene data point to what I'm going to say, but there seems to be a hesitancy to have national pride. I would say like prioritizing humility as a value might be a way to look at it, as opposed to being embarrassed in their country, just being cautious for bravado. But that national pride does really manifest in places that have clear in-group, out-group rivalries or a post-colonial identity. And in the United States, when you look at where were we really excited to be American in the last few years, it's when that survey starts at the end of the 80s. So it's the Cold War, when America defeats the Soviet Union and is the unquestioned political system and economic system of the world, followed by 9/11. I'm not really surprised that it would be teeteringly high during that. I think that that's probably aberrant. I think that most liberal democracies probably just don't think that way as much. And you would find if we were to get bombed or invaded again next month, that number would skyrocket in the United States. You'd find that Democrats and independents, if something horrible were to happen in a major city, I think you'd see that number go up again, because it would get us out of where we are of thinking, well, what is the definition of pride, which is where I'm at, to like, fuck you, these colors don't run. So I think that's what's going on. When you look at this more broadly, I don't think that it's America hates America. I don't think that America has lost faith in America. This is a phenomenon which is very much widespread throughout the developed world of Western liberal countries.
That is interesting. It's interesting to look at it in that, global perspective, because certainly if we're going to draw this out on the party lines that Pew does, there is a divide, especially in our modern meta, of internationalist being a more democratic trait, and America first, literally being the slogan of the dominant faction within the Republican Party.
It's also, I mean, like the Republican versus Democrat and independent perspective is striking in the United States. There's a massive statistical difference between them. It could be several things. I mean, I think, like, I grew up in Oklahoma. I think when you say, like, are you proud of your country? I think a lot of that would fall under the questions I was asking earlier. Are you glad to be an American? Do you appreciate the sacrifices of people who came before you? I don't, the word pride specifically for terminological reasons rankles me, but I think a lot of people basically mean what I'm talking about, of like, yeah, I'm really glad we're here. I'm glad America exists, and I'm glad I'm a part of it. I think part of it is that broadly, pride is sort of a proxy for cultural loyalty with people that are in the Republican Party to a great extent of, are you loyal to the cultural identity that is the United States? And that's kind of how they see it. I think that Democrats, and I think, Jen, I realize that you're a fellow independent. I think that you're doing a good job of articulating where a lot of Democrats come from, which is they see pride as more conditional in the sense that they see part of patriotism as being critical. Of we've got a standard we want to live up to, and if we're falling short of that, we want to point that out, and that's kind of a different approach to it. Then the other bit that I've been thinking about this all morning. I was going on a walk thinking about this. With a lot of the other countries that have really high national pride, I almost wonder if it is like a compensation for failed institutions. Like a lot of the countries that score really high on that list, they have pretty bad courts, pretty disaffected elections, and very much worse economies than whatever we would have in the United States. We can quibble about how good we are compared to Canada and the Netherlands, but we're all doing a sight better than Bolivia and sub-Saharan Africa. I wonder if for them it's almost like a social cohesion mechanism of we can't trust institutions, so let's have a national identity that we really, really get behind, and that'll be a way for us to kind of cohere together.
Which actually kind of tracks with the Republican Party being so supportive of, saying that they're proud.
They're populists now. They feel like the institutions have let them down. I kind of think there might be something to that.
And they're actively breaking what's left. So that would track.
But it's remained consistent from before the populist rise.
That's true. Yeah, you're right.
It has consistently been in the high 80s to low 90s.
Yeah,
but I've been watching this for a while, and the Republicans have been saying that our government, they talk about it almost religiously, that government doesn't work and everything should be done by the private sector. It's who they are. It's what they believe in. So the idea that the Republicans distrust and think that our institutions were broken, even when they weren't, they didn't let facts get in the way, but they believed that our government was broken. And here you have them saying that they're proud to be an American, even though they think that our government is trash. So I'm just saying it matches Andrew's
seeing
theory.
America as apart from the American government might be something that you're hitting on. That Democrats see it as entirely tied to the American, that America is the American government.
Yeah, and I'm in that camp. I see the government as a subset of the country. It's not. I don't see it as a pyramid with a government on top. I see America as a big amorphous body, and the government's one of the organs in it, like a spleen. Or I don't know, a kidney. It's important. I don't want to get rid of it, but I don't think it's like the thing. I don't think it's emblematic of the whole country.
I would agree with that.
I don't know that I do, because it's if our government were to dissolve, let's say we become where we're headed in 50 years is that we suddenly become 4 separate nations. You have the West Coast, the East, you have the Middle America. What if we all split? If there is no federal government, then the United States isn't a thing. It is the one thing that unites us. The Constitution is the one thing that really binds us all to this one idea. So I don't know how you separate the two. I know there's culture and stuff, but without the government, we don't have a country.
It is a steering
basic
mechanism that we control. We, the people, control. I guess there really is a question of all right, well, who's moving the Ouija board tile? Is it just, this subsection of everybody's collective will? Is it a permanent class of people that are trying to steer things as best they can? How effective is it being done? And all those are literally the backbone of the political conversations. But I will say, I'm an unrepentant American exceptionalist. So I'm very, very proud to be an American. I'm very happy that we have created a society in which I could have a job that was literally unexplainable to people when I was born. I'm very proud to have the house that I have. I'm very proud to be raising a child in the United States of America. And while I don't think anything that you've said, Jen, is something that I find particular delight in. I don't think that the negative elements of American foreign policy or American domestic policy are great. I do think that they pale in comparison to the glorious American experiment and the bounty that I get to enjoy every single day, and I now get to export internationally. I'm thrilled. I'm happy. I'm very, very happy to be an American. And I also think that our self-criticism is our superpower. And we've done more in our, coming up this July 4th will be the beginning of our 250th year celebration. And we've done more to advance the cause of liberty within our own borders than other countries have in a similar time frame. And while that means that we came from dark places, it means that we are continuing to get better, and self-reflection, self-criticism is part of that. And I'm proud of that. I'm proud that everybody has the ability to say that they fucking hate it here, even if, that people might disagree. I think that is a great element of our society. I am extraordinarily proud.
I mean, I think there's something different between being happy to have been born here and having the privileges that come with being in this country and being proud of it, because I don't necessarily think that we just continue to get better. Right now, like you said,
scoreboard says otherwise.
We're locking up people in cages that have committed no crimes and shipping them to foreign countries. We are actively murdering innocent children and we are doing terrible things in this world.
We're selling weapons that are doing.
We are in. Yeah, that is helping murder those people.
Okay, I'm just saying. Let's give us the proper credit in the chain.
Yeah, but let's also take some responsibility, because like you said, in this government, we are the people that steer the ship. And so I am not going to sit here and absolve myself of responsibility for the horrible things my government is doing. And in the last 6 months in particular, I'm watching us behave incredibly badly. And so I just can't sit here and be like, am I proud of the harm we are doing in the world? I can't ignore that, because we're able to be podcasters in this country. Like, yes, I've gotten benefits from being here. I love how strong my passport is. I love my community. I love, there's a lot of stuff. I love the sports in this country. There's so much stuff that I love in America. But pride is, I don't know, I'm proud to be the host of Congressional Dish, because I feel like my work hours are doing something that's good in the world. Am I proud to be an American looking at all the harm we're doing in the world? I can't ignore those harms. I just can't. And so I would love to be the person on 4th of July week that sits there and says oh, I'm proud to be an American, but I just can't ignore all the people that are hurting right now because of our country and the way we're treating the people that should be Americans in our country, people who came here and who have legal visas and are having them stripped for no good reason and are ending up in cages and ending up in countries they're not from. We are doing horrible things to our own. So I really struggle to take pride in that at this particular moment.
That's fine. And look, we created outlets in which we bring these topics up and discuss them freely and have them not be suppressed, so people can have these conversations and be armed with not only the back and forth, but also the facts for which they can go and make their own decisions in terms of electoral consequences or even just the social fabric of the American society. But I think that the fact that we can do that we are doing that's part of our living, that people are paying for the ability for us to make this content and keep these issues at the fore. It's hard to say that I guess the only problem that I would have with your argument is that while taking nothing away from your pointing out of the darker elements of our society, I also think that there are things that we take for granted that are net goods to not only America, but also the world writ large. I think that American prosperity and invention has materially benefited the globe, has made people live longer, has made people happier, freer, and that, we tend to take those things for granted when we hyper focus on negatives. And I'm not saying that the negatives aren't real, but I do think that we should on balance understand that America has been a good to the rest of the world.
See, this is to me a better question than pride, because I think pride is a weird word. Do you think America is mostly a force for good with bad things that happen, or mostly a force for bad with good exceptions? And I would be very firmly in the former camp.
But that's not the question that was asked. The question is pride, and pride is a feeling. And right now I'm really struggling to feel more of we've done so much good in the world than feel the bad that I'm witnessing in this moment in time. Right now there's so much bad, and it's really bad, that I'm just struggling to feel all of the good stuff that we've done, because some of the good stuff we've done is like give medicine to people all over the world. Well, we're taking that back out of nowhere. So it's like even the good things that we've done, we're now retracting. And right now, in this moment, when you're talking about my feelings, I feel shame. And I think shame is not the same as pride. So
that's awesome. I also I legitimately think that it's awesome that we can have a society where you can publicly say that I'm ashamed to be an American. I think that it is important to our dialogue. It is very important to how we keep ourselves attuned to it. And I guess that is the biggest thing is I don't view the American government as being wholly synonymous with my identity, at least as an American.
I think I'm very much in that camp. Like I love Oklahoma. Like it remains my homeland. I really care about it. There are some real dipshits in the Oklahoma government that piss me off so bad. I find them embarrassing and infuriating, but they don't shame me. Like I don't like when I'm outside of Oklahoma. I do not feel any sense of guilt. But then again, I don't tend to have that kind of collective identity as much either. So I'm not really feeling the pride or the shame. I don't think.
The one other thing that I would say in terms of pride is that pride to me is buy-in, and it's hard to fight for something that you don't have buy-in on. And if there is one thing that I would say I don't think is great is when cynicism becomes nihilism and you don't feel that there is any way for which you can interact with your society. And that's harmful because those start to break the bonds of social cohesion that go beyond whether or not you believe you have a say in your government. Now I do believe that sometimes that bleeds into the permission structure of like, okay, well, what about your neighbor? What about your family? What about the bonds of like whether or not somebody should die because you view them as being harmful? Like that's where I think nihilism is something that I do believe we should work against. And to me, pride means, oh, this is something that I care about. Even if I think it's being run in a super fucked up way, I do care about it. I want it to be better. I have pride in my homeland and I want to improve it.
Can you all, this isn't a trick question, but can you just give me like a shoot from the hip definition of pride? Because that's one of the things I'm getting hung up on is like, what do we mean by that? Gay shit? Okay, thanks. Yep. Rainbow flag? Am I rainbow flag for America?
Yeah. You said to shoot from the hip.
These colors don't run, but they sparkle.
And then they add new ones every 2 years.
Yeah.
I think when I say that I'm proud of something, it's because I feel like it's a positive force. So, or it's a positive thing that I'm doing. So it's like, I look at my careers, right? I'm proud of Congressional Dish. I'm not proud of the years that I spent sending people to timeshare presentations. Like it paid my bills. I don't feel guilty about it, but like, I'm not proud of that job. Like it's fine. But proud is the stuff that I do that's hard, the stuff that like doing Congressional Dish and not taking sponsors and not picking a side, like not becoming this caricature of the lefty on this show and just in life. Like I think we've all talked about this before. It would be much more lucrative if we all just pick sides and like preach to our choirs. I'm proud that I haven't done that because I think I'm doing something good. And so I think that the connection of proud and positive behaviors, I think that's why I'm struggling to say in this moment that I'm feeling proud to be an American, because it's like I'm seeing a lot of things that I'm ashamed of. And so that there's such a connection there where I think Justin might have a slightly different definition of how he's using the word.
Justin, what is your definition?
Of just pride in general, or I mean, I think like what do we say what I feel.
So it's buying
in relation to America, but
it sounded like you were saying like a combination of like gratitude was the primary thing that I got out of you, which by the way I share. I'm incredibly grateful that I'm born in America and that I have all of the benefits of citizenship, and I was born when I was. Like I'm absolutely thrilled with that. So I think part of this is I do think terminological. Like I don't think that it's
of course
half the country
fucking weasel way out of this goddamn conversation. You fucking Poindexter.
Yeah. I don't know. I think that this is really helpful because Justin, you and I are kind of having two different conversations. And I think the fact that we're defining the word differently is a part of that, because I feel the same gratitude that you do. You are so annoyed with me today.
No, I'm annoyed with him. I'm not annoyed with you. I know you. I'm annoyed with him.
I wrote a fucking book on this, Justin. I'm here to mediate. I'm like a hostage negotiator between the conservatives and the progressives.
But I do think the fact that we're talking about two different versions of the definition of pride, I think it's going to help us to figure out like why we're not seeing this the same way. Because a lot of things you're saying about, you know, the gratitude you have about being an American, I share those. But I think I see the definition of pride differently. So I find this really helpful what Andrew's doing right now, because it's helping me understand why you and I aren't seeing eye to eye here.
I think the cartoon that the two sides have each other in terms of pride are that when the conservatives use pride, they're talking about loyalty and gratitude. I find generally that's kind of the synthesis there. When the liberals use pride, they're using it more of esteem in accomplishment or something like that, or you know, where are we in relation to the goalposts? I think when it gets cartoonish, the progressives look at the conservatives and think of like jingoism and chauvinism, that it's dick swinging. When the conservatives look at the progressives, they see traitors. Those are the cartoonish versions. But I think that the reality is more the former.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. When I say pride, I think I look at America holistically as, you know, I do really, really like the term the American experiment. Like, because I do think that it was, you know, such a weird gathering of a lot of different ideas and people, and it's changed, and we're just like this really, really long running sitcom that kind of keeps staying relevant and oddly more popular. Like I've never been happier than when I travel abroad and I realize that the rest of the world is just fucking obsessed with us. Like they have like a portion of their nightly news every fucking night that just deals with us in a way that like is not common. Like we do not give a fuck about anybody. Like I have to really force myself to give a shit about Keir Starmer, and they're like the closest thing we get. They're basically like our dad, right? Like, and I barely can give a shit about them. We export so much culturally. We export so much physically. We export so much in terms of information services. It's just remarkable. It's insane. And it's insane that we're as malleable as we are. And so it's like, Jen, when you rattle off the things that make you disgusted about this country, I tend to look at it and I'm like, yeah, known bugs. We'll see whether or not we can get a patch working. Yeah, maybe it'll change, but also it does change. Shit changes in this country in a way that like it's really, really, really hard to do through the rest of the world. In fact, you can say that a lot of the shit that we've exported up to and including hatred of America is something that has radically shaped the rest of the world and their opinion of us. And that's cool. I just think that that's fucking rad. I think
we have
that's
we have
awesome.
the best free speech laws in the history of the planet. Good job, America. We invented separation of church and state. That's really cool. And
number one in SEC football championships.
That's right. Take that, Canada, that may or may not participate in the thing that Justin said. Yeah, no, there's lots of reasons. I think I'm a yes with an asterisk, Justin. I'm a yes with an ask me what I mean by pride.
Yeah.
Well, and like I said, it's a feeling. So if we start behaving better, my feelings will change. Like I was pretty proud to be an American in the 90s because I felt like we were doing some good in the world. And right now I feel like we're backtracking in a way that makes me sad. So it's like the feelings can change, and I hope that they do. But if you're asking me today on July 2nd, 2025, how proud I am, not a lot.
The 90s were fucking awesome, by the way. Like I was born at the exact right time that my awareness of the world happened right after the fall of the Soviet Union. Mm-hmm. And so there was this just awesome 10-year period where we're like, hey, we won. We're friends with Russia. Khitomer exploded, but we're bailing out the Klingon Empire, and everybody's going to be friends, and everybody loves us.
Yeah,
that
we were
lasted
the mediators
for about a
of
decade.
things. Like that was really nice. That I thought it was cool that when there was a problem in the world, people would be like, "Let's call in America to play referee." You know, that was a time where I was proud because the rest of the world wanted us to be there, and now they're kind of calling in China. So I don't like the direction that we're going in. And I feel like if we don't feel at least some shame in our behavior, we won't change it.
I mean, I don't know. We played peacemaker for a decades-long skirmish in Africa last week. We helped them sign a peace. We helped them sign a peace treaty. It's not like America has totally abdicated. And by the way, if we're talking about how awesome the 90s were and how benign American foreign policy was, then somebody tell Belgrade, who still has fucking bombed out buildings because we put a goddamn missile downtown.
I had a funny conversation with the
You're
priest
kind of proving
about
my
that.
point.
Well, but you're saying, I mean, I guess no, but this is my point. My point is that, look, American foreign policy has been ugly for a while, and I don't assign every misstep in our foreign policy or every interaction, any interventionist interaction, as to the critical soul of America. It does not affect my pride in the larger thing. I can disagree with it. And the fact that I disagree with it being legal which is not a thing that happens around the world universally. And I think we take for granted is something that I do like to center when these kinds of questions are being asked.
I guess I just look at, like, there have been things where I've been able to really celebrate improvements, right? So we've had gay people being allowed to get married. We had our first Black president. Like, we had these amazing milestones. And right now, I'm just seeing very few of those. I'm seeing backtracking in so many different ways that, like I said, today on July 2nd, in the second Trump administration, after we reelected that asshole, I'm just really struggling by watching the news, and everything seems to be bad news right now and seems to be stuff that makes me ashamed. I'm waiting for the next, hit of, but here's where we get better. And I just feel like it's been a while since I've really felt proud of anything that we've done. I feel like we're going backwards instead of progressing in so many different ways. And so that's why when I kind of look fondly upon my childhood or like the years past, it's because we did have milestones that I could really look at and be like, well, at least we're progressing in these areas. I don't know where we're progressing right now. So that's also a part of it. Like,
one of the weird things statistically that's also been going on the last 20 years is there's an effect going on between conservatives and progressives where the gap is widening, but it's not because the conservatives are necessarily getting more conservative. It depends on what we're talking about, for the record. But like gay marriage is a pretty good example, where if we go back to the 90s, there were more Democrats that were in favor of gay marriage than Republicans, but there was more convergence. Since that time, Republicans now are more in favor of gay marriage than Democrats were in the 90s, but Democrats are so in favor of gay marriage that the gap appears to have widened, even though both parties are demonstrably better on gay marriage. The people in them are better on gay marriage. So it looks like there's a gap, but I look at that and go, oh, the Republicans are kind of lagging behind the Democrats, but overall, everybody's getting better on gay rights.
Yeah. I mean, really, the fight now in that acronym is not on the G or the L side. it's further toward the end.
Well, and look at what's happening with trans rights. We're going backwards in that direction.
That's what I was getting to.
Yeah, I'm just seeing a lot of ways in which we're going backwards. We're losing our rights. We're picking on people. We're picking on immigrants and trans people, and we're becoming less inclusive. In fact, we have an entire movement against diversity and equity and inclusion. It feels very that's the thing. Like, I'm proud to be an American, and what we're doing right now feels so un-American to me that it makes me I just feel the shame. I can't.
Jen, why do you think the Europeans are so low? Like, because you've articulated why you're ashamed to be an American, but like for the Dutch that have lower pride in their country than we have in ours, or France is about the same. Too busy
splitting fucking bills.
It's not the same stuff. So like, why do you think they're low?
I have no idea. I can't talk to them.
Fair.
Sorry.
That's my favorite American trait, not giving a shit about the rest of the world. God, I love it. It's the fucking best.
We are known for that too.
Yeah, God, it's fucking awesome. God,
Justin.
It's fucking, oh man. Yeah. Sorry, I just got lost in thinking about how awesome we are.
Okay. Happy 4th of July.
You know what I do really
Justin.
like, Justin? I like over-the-top, ostentatious, fuck yeah, Americanisms on the 4th of July. Like there was that GIF a few years ago of There was a guy in a maybe you know what it's it looks to be like a fan boat, like a one man, like basically a lawnmower on a lake with a really big fan behind it. And
That's a fan boat. Yes.
He's on a fan boat, and he's rigged up a barbecue on the fan boat so that he's cooking burgers while going at maximum speed and drinking a beer. And he's got an American flag. And I'm like, yes, this is the country I signed up for.
We are funny. I'll give us that.
Yeah. And we steal all the funniest Canadians too. That's just like as soon as they get past a certain level in Toronto, just whoop, right to LA.
Yep, they get to Second City in Chicago, and then they go to LA.
That's it.
We'll take the funniest Canadians.
We'll take them all. I think we could use Alberta. We could take Alberta because that would probably lower gas prices. But we don't really need anything else in Canada.
So, hey, fun intersection here. What I'm doing on the political orphanage this week and next is states that weren't. And I'll elaborate on what I'm talking about when we get to the promo section of the program. Next week, I'm planning to do the 2 times we invaded Canada, because when the Revolutionary War got started, we did send delegates to Quebec, where we were like, hey, we're rebelling against the British. Your old arch nemesis want to be American? And they were like, I don't know. We speak French. We are Catholic. But we kind of make an attempt. The one that I found really interesting was Newfoundland, which is a province of Canada, is late to the game. Newfoundland doesn't become a Canadian province till like 1950. Like, I don't know if people know this, but like there are a lot of people that are alive right now that were born in Newfoundland, which was an independent country. They weren't Canadian. And if you were to go back to like 1945, there was more support for joining the United States than there was for joining Canada at that time in Newfoundland.
Yeah.
But whatever was
one
brought
of
up.
the greatest accents of all time. I would have loved to add that to the American.
Would have been great.
roster.
And we could have called Maine like the middle just to piss them off. We'd be like, you're not really north, you know, like you're kind of, you're north in the sense that Winterfell is north. You're not north of the wall like Newfoundland, the 51st state.
That would have been great. All right. Happy 4th of July. Patreon.com/we're-not-wrong is where you need to go if you want a bonus episode of this show each and every week on this. What are we talking about on this edition?
AI.
I can't get my papers right. That's why I print these out. It's too cold up here.
We're talking about A1.
We're talking about the A1 again. Slather it on your steak, friends. Just kidding. It's AI. AI got stripped out of the one big beautiful bill. We'll talk a little bit about the OBBB in that, but it's not. We don't know where it's going right now, so I didn't want to do a full segment on it until it actually passes and we know what's in it. But now we know what's not in it, and that was the AI regulation. So we will talk about that. Patreon.com/we're-not-wrong. Thank you to everybody. We've had a good little surge here recently. I'm going to pause right here because
Wait, do we have a surge? Because did Jen cry? What happened? Why did we get more people?
I don't know.
Jen, it's been about a month. Can you please cry?
I know. I'll try. What are we talking about next? Weed? Oh, but Abbott saved my weed. So I don't
You
think
have to say nice things about Abbott, which could make you cry.
Maybe. Yeah.
Although truthfully, I don't know that much about Greg Abbott. I know that all of my friends in Texas who are not Republicans despise him, but I honestly don't know that much about him. Like I genuinely don't know. I don't know. I've not paid that much attention to Texas politics. I also suspect the spectrum of Texan conservatism is quite large, and he might well be in the middle of it.
Well, I just know that he was horrible to the immigrants down at the border. Like he's the one that wants to put basically like razor wire in the Rio Grande to cut people as they're crossing the river. And like, I just think he's a shitty person. Like this is literally the first time I've heard of Greg Abbott doing a thing where I'm not like, you're a dick. So that's the only one I can think of specifically, but it's literally like every story about the guy. He's doing something that I'm just like, you're mean.
Wait, can I do another fun historical fact before Justin gets back?
Sure.
So Yep, never mind. Go ahead, Justin. It's peripheral. It'll come up again in the future.
Let's talk about weed.
Yeah.
Texas's THC battle peaked this summer. In May, lawmakers passed Senate Bill 3, a sweeping ban on consumables containing Delta-8, Delta-9, and other intoxicating isomers, threatening thousands of hemp retailers that were created after 2019's hemp law. Governor Greg Abbott vetoed the measure on the 22nd of June, saying that the market needs smart regulation, not prohibition, floating age limits, testing, and packaging rules instead. It was Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick who drove the ban through the Senate and now has to go through whatever he's going to try to do in this special section. The Texas Supreme Court is simultaneously deciding whether health officials can outlaw Delta-8 administratively, a case that kept the compound legal under injunction since 2021. For those of you who haven't been following this and have been wondering why weed is just available at every gas station that you go to, it's because of a farm bill that was passed federally where that rascal Tom Massey snuck in a law that would allow hemp to be re-derived enough times that it could be psychoactive. So that's what Delta-8, Delta-9, THCA, all of these that have come out. But spoiler alert, they work. You know, you can put them into vapes, you can put them into gummies. They will get you high, although not in the same way that regularly derived cannabis would. So, Mr. Andrew Heaton, what are the right laws for THC products?
I think probably what Abbott's pitching. I mean, I'm very much.
Abbott is pitching. Figure it out.
He had suggestions in the veto that he wrote. So Abbott wrote a veto very last minute. In Texas politics, he had to do an affirmative veto. So if he just sat there, it would have gone through law, and then he could have claimed, I don't have anything to do with it. But he actively vetoed it at like 10 p.m. on
30 minutes before the deadline.
Right. And in the veto, the bit that I was confused by, he says that it's already being contested in federal law and that it would not have stood up to court scrutiny and it would have gone through years. I don't fully understand how that's the case. I'm not sure why Texas would not have the ability to legislate weed in the same way that, states can legislate alcohol. There are both dry and moist counties in Oklahoma right now. So I'm not entirely sure where he's coming from on that, but sure, fair enough. What he suggested was that it makes sense to have laws in place to try to stop kids from getting it, which I agree with. I don't think kids should be taking psychoactive substances, particularly if they don't know how much they're taking, things like that. I think that it's something for adults. And so if they're figuring out ways in which to restrict access to kids, some of it's kind of dumb and I don't think we'll do anything. Like doing it like barring it on Sundays, that's old religious blue law shit. That doesn't really do anything. The only argument that you can kind of hold water with on that is that maybe alcoholics, because they can't buy liquor on Sundays, it kind of gives them like 24 hours once a week where they have to think about their actions.
Only the ones that don't plan.
Right. Yeah. Or but you can go get beer at a gas station. So maybe you just buy that. So I think that's probably pretty dumb. Right. But like in terms of there being some rules around making sure kids don't take it, that's fine. The other bit that I think this is probably the very best argument against legal weed, which I'm emphatically in favor of, by the way. I'm emphatically in favor of legal weed and also mushrooms. I think that we should be, I believe in all of that, individualist shit. Of it's freedom, America, it's your body. Like if it's your garage, do whatever you want as long as you're not hurting anybody. Unless they ask for it, then it's fine. So I'm all in favor of that. But the best good faith argument that I've heard in favor of legalized weed is that with alcohol, you can have a clinical analysis of whether or not you're over the limit when you're driving. With marijuana, it's much harder to do that. A lot of the marijuana tests for THC are hair-based tests, in which case you do marijuana 3 weeks ago and it's still in your system. That's not very useful in terms of whether or not you're high while you're driving, which means that it ends up basically being a field sobriety test that a cop is administering that has a lot of latitude in it. I think that that's a reasonable point, but I don't think it's enough to restrict other people's autonomy, individual rights, and by doing so have a massive enforcement mechanism that squanders resources. So I don't think it's not sufficient to move me, but that's probably the best argument against it. I think this is good. I think To dip back into our previous topic, Texas should be embarrassed that Oklahoma is more free than they are in terms of marijuana. Oklahoma came together as a people and legalized this shit back in 2016, 2017 or so. Yay, good job
earlier,
us.
Because our friend Kevin Ryan had weed with him when I hung out with him in Des Moines.
Right.
No. You know, it was to the 2020 primary that he had gummies that tasted like a bag of grass, but fucked me up. Jesus.
Yeah. No, it's really funny. Oklahoma's really weird like that. Cause like when I was a kid, like Oklahoma's a very culturally conservative part of the country, but there is this like laudable libertarian backbone to it. Where when you talk to people, they're like, oh no, drugs are bad. You know, you shouldn't do drugs. You're like, what if it's in your own house? Absolutely. It's your own goddamn house. This is America. If you want to do drugs in your house, that's the right place to be, Oklahoma and America. No, I think it's silly. I think that, I think the arguments are largely drugs are bad. Okay. And that's where they're coming from. There are some good arguments, like I said earlier, in terms of kids getting access to it. There are some other things too where it's new, and not necessarily knowing the THC amount in it is an issue. I know we've previously discussed this on the program, and I found out firsthand that apparently THC is a free-floating particle that can recombine in any amount if you leave it in the back of a car while it's melting. And so you might think you're eating a quarter of a gummy, but you're eating 5 of them. So yeah, they're kind of getting the hang of this. But that being said, though, Abbott is correct. The way to handle that is by having smarter regulation, not to have prohibition. Prohibition is going to make that system worse. Means that if you're going to now go get your shitty gummies from the guy at the gas station, same guy, but he now keeps it behind the counter, and he's doing it in some weird distillation process in his unventilated, unscrutinized basement. And there's no way to figure out that's not going to be better. It's going to make the situation worse.
Jen, say something nice about Greg Abbott.
This is the first time that he's done a thing where I didn't think, wow, you're a dick. So I was pleasantly surprised.
I was surprised. And there were some people, I wound up dipping more into Texas politics than I have in the past. Because it's so Byzantine, and the forces in Texas politics are so weird and entrenched. It's always been a little bit intimidating for me to try to figure out what the hell is going on, even though I probably should, because I can just go to the state house anytime I want, like 5 minutes from my house. But there was this big, a big role of conservatives that were very, very mad. Veterans groups were mad that this was going to be made illegal, and it really seemed like the only natural constituency for Dan Patrick's ban was the
drug
medical, the medical cannabis field. And that were like, wait a minute, no. Eventually we get to win. Like, why are you flooding the market with this like very
That's the whole alliance. That's always the alliance. It's always Baptists and bootleggers. It's always a bunch of Puritans and a bunch of criminals that pretend to be Puritans. That's how it works.
That's what I'm telling you, is that this was different in that I didn't see a lot of church groups. Like, I followed a lot of the conservative conversation about this, and there wasn't a lot of Ned Flanders types standing up and saying, please, somebody think of the children.
So it's just legal marijuana trying to stop gas stations.
It was legal
from
marijuana.
Legal marijuana.
And booze distributors in Texas that were like, we're actually seeing something that we've never seen before. And that is a downtick in alcohol sales. And that's especially now that these hemp drinks were available. Like, you can buy them in gas stations and Specs and stuff here
and bars
in Texas. You can buy them in bars.
Yeah.
And so now all of a sudden it's like, wow, if you are invested in alcohol and you are not pivoting to this, it was a problem. And so I think that's the reason why Abbott vetoed it, is that he looked at his own constituency and he was like, it'd be one thing if there were 1,000, Baptist moms that were marching on Austin to say, ban this devil drug, but it didn't really happen. They weren't there.
Well, there's a lot of businesses that were going to go under if this happened, because my favorite weed drink is a made in Texas brand. And so, and
what is it? Shout them out.
I can't, that's the thing. I haven't been there in a minute.
Green Spurs?
No, I wish I could remember it. I have a picture of it somewhere on my
Guns
phone, but
Smokers?
I don't remember.
Let Heaton get 2 or 3 more of these off.
Okay.
Lone Star Bud, Lone Bud, Shaggy Armadillo.
Right. Go ahead, Jen.
But yeah, I know that it was like made in Texas, you know, and I have a friend who started a small business because she does all the like the hemp lotions and shit like that. And so I think there was big business pressure. And I'm not saying he had anything to do with this, but like John Boehner, the former Republican Speaker of the House, now works for a weed company. So it's like there are, so I think the business community had its voice heard, as it always does in Republican politics here. And I think that was probably,
once again, the Chamber of Commerce saves America. Thank you, American corporations. The other bit that I think is adding to that is, I'll say like in Oklahoma, where I grew up, where everybody publicly would go, you know, don't even give drug dealers a trial. It costs 30 cents for rope. There's no, like, that was the kind of rhetoric that those same folks are going, you know, I've been taking CBD and my joints feel so much better. And I found if you just have a little bit of THC in it, it actually really, like, there's a lot of people in their 60s and 70s that were extremely opposed to drugs who have found legitimate medical and what's the word I'm looking for? Palatable?
Palliative.
Palliative, thank you. Palliative care that's come through. They may not even be doing it recreationally, although I would hasten to add that would be totally fine. But I think that there's a lot of people that otherwise would have been skeptical of this that just over the last few years have seen the medical benefits and gone, okay, this maybe isn't something that we need to treat like heroin.
It is really funny that I left California, which had by far the most open cannabis policy of any state. It's been legal in some form in California since the 90s. They were medical, widely medical, permissive medical, and then recreational. And then I came to Texas, where it is like hard illegal, and yet buying weed is easier, cheaper, and available more places in Texas after this hemp law than it was in California. And it was certainly cheaper since they made it recreational in California. Now it's fucking expensive.
I haven't seen a single bar that has a weed drink in California, and I used to get them regularly in Austin. It's weird. And I went to Nashville and they were serving weed drinks, but I've said this before, but I will say it again. I am concerned about this because there is a lack of mandatory education of both the people serving it and the people using it. And so when we're looking at regulation, that's something we really need to do. I strongly believe in licensing for marijuana, that you have to go one time. This whole, like, California used to make you have to go once a year to get your license. That was stupid. Yeah. But I do think that you should have to get a one-time sit down with a doctor to get a license where they make sure that you understand what the milligram readings are, how to make the feeling go away. Because you can do that. A lot of people don't know that if you smoke a joint and you eat some chocolate after, the feeling goes away, or at least enough to like get your marbles back together. But people don't understand that if you have an edible, you are on this roller coaster, you cannot get off.
Yeah.
And so, there's just a lot of things that I think people need to be educated about. Because I remember, I just told the story the other day, which is why it's in my head. But I had just moved back to California in 2014 and hung out with a friend who was like deep in his stoner phase. So he was getting brownies that were 1,000 milligrams, and they were smaller than the size of my hand. But at the time, like, I wasn't really aware of how much that was. I knew it was a lot. And so I said, like, just give me like a little piece of that. And he truly gave me maybe the size of a chocolate chip. Flash forward to 2 hours later, he and Joe are watching a basketball game. I'm sitting on the couch with a blanket on, saying no words because I am terrified that I don't know whether or not I'm wearing pants.
Yeah.
And so, like, the dosing can be kind of terrifying because I was wearing pants. There was also a very easy way for me to check, and it didn't occur to me to just look. Yeah. Yeah. And that being that out of my head. Now, luckily, I was in my own home. I was safe. I was with people I was 100% comfortable with. But that can be a very, very scary thing if you eat something the size of a chocolate chip and you lose your mind like that.
I am a hard advocate for especially edible dosing. I believe that anything that you are genuinely, that there's a general expectation that you eat all of should be under 5 milligrams.
I agree.
Unless you go to a specialty shop and somebody, the stoners that want the 1,000 milligram chocolate bars, they can go to this 1,000 milligram chocolate bar place and buy it there. But if you are just at a gas station, you should not be selling things that are that high dosage, because you do have a lot of people that are coming to a legal product now without a lot of expertise in this field, that have never done this before, that don't know the difference. And look, a 5 milligram might kick their ass, but they're going to be fine. They're going to be able to get through it. If it's 25 and up, like that's where you start talking about people having like aftershocks 2-3 days after they get high on an edible, and depending on your metabolism, that's just not good. So I don't know. I'm very curious to see whether or not they come up with common sense, good ideas. Texas has a very highly regulated, and to your point, Jen, the business community that came up around this field was very well organized. They ran a very aggressive counter campaign to this. It's centered around Dan Patrick did a now infamous press conference where he was just doing his reefer madness routine, and he's like holding up this like bag of stuff that you can get at a gas station. It's by this brand Hometown Hero here in Austin, and he's like, does anybody want this? Could change your brain forever. Here. And he's like throwing, he's throwing the bag of weed cereal bites like out to people, to the press and the crowd, which I thought some reporter should have eaten the whole bag. And
that would have been amazing. If our man Kevin Ryan had been there, he would have been catching him like t-shirts out of a t-shirt can and then devouring them.
He just would have jumped up and ate it whole.
Yeah. Like a dolphin eating a sandwich.
Yeah. But the Hometown Hero people were like, look, there's a reason why he only showed you the front, because he's not going to show you the back, which is we are mandated to put all of our ingredients. We are mandated to put a QR code so you understand more about everything that goes into it. Your dosage is there. This is a very highly regulated, any kind of foodstuffs are still highly regulated in Texas, no matter the psychoactive ingredient. So I hope they do good. I hope that the lobbying efforts of the business community are able to push things in a sensible direction. You should not be 16 and able to buy psychoactive weed at a gas station. I think it's smart that the state is stepping in and putting in some kind of guardrail for that. But the business community have been asking for that. Like nobody was on the side of the Wild West, especially the people that were putting real capital into building businesses around this and knew that was never going to survive.
Is most of the arguments against it, like, because Justin, you say it's really not coming from Ned Flanders in Texas. No. It's not a religious thing. So is it largely a safety thing / like we don't want it cutting into alcohol? Is that your read on where the opposition's coming from?
When I was trying to dip into the like online conversation about this, I didn't see any religion. I mean, there were a few law enforcement people that were like, people are getting high and driving, which like people get drunk and drive. So I don't know. It was hard to me
penalize
to separate
that, not the, yeah.
It was hard for me to separate any argument that Dan Patrick was making that wasn't also applicable to people abusing alcohol. Like there's no doubt that like he kept saying that there was a situation where a kid got high on edibles and then ran in front of a train and died. Now, some of the activists on the pro-hemp side said that he was lying. Nobody could find who this kid was, that this was just a totally made-up story. But let's assume that it's true. That happens. Kids, there are various things that happen that kids do where, unfortunately, they lose their lives at a young age. And alcohol is certainly one of those things that can make people make very, very bad decisions. There was nothing about these hemp THCA treats that seemed to be unique to any of that. And I didn't see any super grassroots organized opposition to it in a way that surprised me, because I thought that there would be like a million mom march, like get this weed off our streets. But Texas ain't like that, I guess.
Here's one difference I will say between the two, which is that if a kid is going to come in contact with alcohol, alcohol tastes like shit, whether it's beer or it's liquor that's put even in something like juice, you can taste that alcohol, you know it's there. One of the problems with edibles is sometimes you can't tell the difference between gummy bears. And so one of the regulations that I would love to see, in fact, federally, I think it should be everywhere.
Make it all taste like licorice?
No, but I do think that every candy that has any kind of THC in it should be stamped with the marijuana leaf. Some of them have that, some of them don't. In fact, my favorite gummies, they look like any other gummy. And so I do think there should be some kind of visual representation mandated on every single one of these things that says this is not candy, because that is one way that a kid could accidentally get super high, and it wouldn't be because of a bad decision. It would be because they didn't know what they were doing. And then also, speaking of not knowing what they're doing, the law enforcement officers do have a point that people are getting in their cars and driving. I think one of the issues with the weed drinks in the bars is that, just like any other edible, it takes about 45 minutes to kick in. And what I've noticed with these bartenders is that they will serve them to people as if they are just serving beers. Yeah. And so if you're having 3 beers, you pretty much you feel that pretty quick before you get in the car. Like, you're not getting hit half an hour into your ride home. Where if someone drinks 3 of these THC things back to back to back, they could get hit very hard in the middle of their drive home. And that's why I think, when I worked in restaurants, in order to serve liquor, there were classes that we had to take. Like, you're not allowed to serve
red light, yellow light, green light.
Yeah, like the ABC is what we called it here in California. They had something equivalent in in Hawaii. But I've taken these classes in every single state that I was a waitress in, and they don't have the equivalent for marijuana, where I find the weed drinks to actually be more dangerous because of the delayed onset. So they're right that regulations are needed. I'm with Abbott that there shouldn't be prohibition, but those regulations, they shouldn't just be in Texas. They should be nationwide, because this is happening all over the country.
Anything sold in a bar or restaurant should be very low dosage comparatively. I would say somewhere between 2 and 5 per drink.
And some of these things are 10 milligrams.
Yeah, and I would err toward 2. I would say if you're drinking 2 milligram, 2.5 per drink, you're going to get stoned. Yeah. But you can have 3 of them. You can have 4 of them. You can have a regular pissing the night away kind of drinking with the boys kind of situation there. But if you're slamming 3 10 milli drinks, you're gonna be fucked, dude.
Yeah, bye.
To play devil's advocate with you all, and I'm not a marijuana guy, but to play devil's advocate, couldn't we kind of say the same thing about bars with alcohol? If you're a bar, you can sell, light beer makes sense, maybe wine, but liquor, absolutely not. Mixed drinks, no. People get fucked up on mixed drinks.
But the licensing exists. So it's in order to serve that alcohol, you have to go through education classes, and you also know your responsibilities as a server. So when I worked in Waikiki, if I overserved someone, that's my ass that can get sued, because I had a responsibility to look out for my clients. And so there was a certain time where someone was so drunk that I'd be like, I can't serve you anymore. Sorry, it's my liability. I could get my bar shut down. And in fact, bars did get shut down for overserving people if they drove or whatever. So it's we would make sure that people were Ubering, or we took keys sometimes. But there is no equivalent for the weed drinks, and they are a different substance. And so, and you could include, you could take the weed or the alcohol classes and add a weed contingent to that. Sure. But right now there is no mandatory education for the servers.
I don't really have a problem with the education. I don't like government paternalism, but I'm fine with and oftentimes like government transparency that's allowing you as an individual to make an informed decision. I've got no problem with that. So if it's a situation where just you're being given information, but you're not having your options restricted, it's more of I don't know. If to Justin's point, if there were a federal law saying you can't serve above X and everywhere, I don't know. There might be a different culture in Oregon as opposed to Oklahoma. I don't know that I would have a super national law for that.
There are ways you can do it. You can make laws on the distribution or something. Obviously Utah has certain restrictions on alcohol per beverage limits. The only thing I would say that's the difference between alcohol and weed is that we have 100+ year cultural history with alcohol. People know what alcohol is. It used to be in cartoons when we grew up. When we grew up, that a cartoon would drink a XXX jug and then be like, "Heck!" Like there is an element of knowing what the process is to get drunk. We are just now building the American, and dare I see when we export this shit globally, like we do, because we're the fucking best. We are building the social edible consumption culture now. And so I would like to see that be done responsibly. And so I am for a little bit of governmental paternalism here, at least at the onset, to be like, let's not have people just getting totally bombed on this. Let's leave it on in.
I will vote for your everybody has to drink weak THC drinks if you vote for my psilocybin's legal bill. Yeah?
Oh, we're obviously down with that.
Okay. All right.
But also, Andrew, I'm willing to meet you where you're at on this, because I don't think we have to limit the amount of THC that's in the drink as long as people have to have some kind of education, including on the customer side. So if someone walks up to a bar and wants the 10 milligrams and knows they're getting fucked up and they're taking an Uber, like, I don't really have a problem with that.
I really what I want is more of a societal thing. Maybe I need to pull the government out of it and just say, societally, just do a fucking 2 milligram drink at the bar. Like, cause I'd like that. Part of the reason why I don't get. Part of the reason why I don't get weed drinks at the bar is because I don't want a fucking 10 milligram thing where I have to either sip it or I'm asking for like, oh, give me another thing of water so I can cut it. Like, I don't want to be doing science. Like, that's the whole thing, cool thing about beer. I ask for a beer, I get a beer. I drink a beer, I ask for another beer. I would like that experience.
You know, I mean, let me be specific, Justin. I was going to the Moon Tower Saloon, whatever those drinks are that they have, I would get one lemonade one and one iced tea one and mix the two and make like a weed Arnold Palmer. I can never say that name properly. But Joe would have one and I would have one, and it was perfect. And we could have like 3 or 4 over the course of the day, be perfectly fine. It was like a light buzz. They were fucking perfect, and they were 2.5s. So
that's good.
It's perfect.
I like having anywhere between 2 and 5 drinks. 5 is the pretty much like the top end of how many drinks I will have at a bar, and 2 is about on the low end. And so I would like just something that can mix in to there.
When I was in college, Oklahoma's beer was 3.2, and I liked it. I like weak beer because I like to drink a lot of it. Mm-hmm. Like, I'd rather drink like 6 of them that are kind of weak than one of them that's kind of strong. And then they changed that one. And I was like, well, now I can't get low beer anymore.
Same with like the edibles. So it's like, if someone wants 1,000 milligrams, like, give me a bag of chocolate chips, each one like 2 milligrams, and then let me eat the whole bag. That sounds great. But having to take a tiny, tiny piece off the edge of a brownie and then getting fucked up, like, let me eat the brownie. I want the whole brownie.
That's the stuff that I hate. I really hate things for which we've been socially and societally trained to eat all of, banishing you to the shadow realm. I think anybody who's into that, God bless you. And we're going to get 1 million fucking emails. Say, man, the only thing that gets me high is 300 milligrams and I take 5 of them. I get it. I understand that you exist. I'm saying
thanks for listening, Joey Diaz.
Yes. Like for the rest of society, there's more people that would like to try this shit that have no experience with it. And I'm trying to on-ramp more people into your culture so you can explain why you need to have a 300 milligram golf ball sized piece of chocolate.
Oh, that would send me to the moon.
We're not wrong pod at gmail.com. That's where you send your annoying emails. Who books that writes, I'm at an HR conference in San Diego this week. Our Wednesday keynote speaker, podcaster / Calm CEO, Jay Sheedy, had to cancel last minute. So fortunately, they found a backup speaker, somebody who's free on Wednesdays. Joseph Robinette Biden Jr.
Oh my God.
Wow. He is taking backup speaking engagements.
He can come on my show.
Real worried.
I'm impressed that he can speak, honestly.
I'm worried about him money-wise. Because there were like reports that the money had kind of ran out with that family and that they had spent through stuff a little bit faster than they were expecting.
Like Hunter's drug habit. It's expensive.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. I'm just like that. Like,
and his legal fees. I mean, no joke. Those legal fees can bankrupt anyone.
Well, and he stiffed the guy that fronted him. Now the guy that fronted him's pissed at Hunter. Like with the most obvious thing that was going to happen ever.
Yeah.
Therapist be crazy, writes. After getting a BA in psychology, I took one class in the marriage and family counseling MA program, and I dropped it like a bunker buster because I couldn't stand the people in the class. I was constantly mediating and consulting the study group I was part of just to keep any semblance of peace. I'm now in marketing where sociopathy is expected and humanity is a nice surprise.
That's amazing. Okay. So I was a psychology major when I first started college. And I started taking the classes, and then I realized that I don't actually want to help people with their problems. I just wanted therapy.
Yeah.
So I think there is a contingent of people who take those classes for the same reason I did, where it's like, I just want to know what's wrong with me.
I got an email from a therapist that was like, Justin, you've talked shit about therapists for fucking years. We get it. You don't like it. I'm sorry that you had a bad experience. To which I said, well, there's two real problems I have with therapy. Number one, I know that if I found the right therapist, it would probably help me. The problem is that finding the right therapist is time consuming, expensive, and annoying. And so once every 5 years, I try a therapist, I almost immediately don't like them and I drop it and then I reset the clock for the next 5 years. The other problem is I'm convinced I would be a better therapist than almost every therapist that I've talked to. And so I judge them against how I would imagine me therapizing myself. And I'm like, that's terrible. You suck. I'm going to leave. And that's what's happened. So
I gotta say, I think Justin would be a great therapist. There have been like several times when I've been really low in life and I've talked to Justin and I haven't just felt better. It's not that I got a pick me up speech. It's that Justin like accurately looked at like, what is the underlying problem that I have? Like, Heaton, you're misinterpreting the situation. You need to think of it this way. And it genuinely helps.
Yeah, he's done the same thing for me. And I like that he's not just telling me like, oh, you're fine, you're beautiful, like don't worry about it. Like, no, he'll tell me how it is, even when it fucking sucks, but I need to hear it.
Right when I was starting to be friends with Justin, this was like early on in our homoerotic bromance. Yeah. I had gone out to Oakland in my camper, and this was in 2020, and I'm working with Justin, and I was like so weirdly apologetic and ashamed of the camper. Like people would talk to me and I'm like, yeah, I bought it. You know, it's kind of a backup option if anything goes wrong. And like, I remember like Justin and I having like a listener giving me whiskey. We had some drinks in the camper and Justin's like, you talk about yourself like you were a failure lawyer. You're not, you're a pirate. Like you are this rogue character that's traveling the country doing podcasting. Like that is a good thing. Like you're not a failure lawyer.
Yeah.
Do you understand that?
That's
And I
rad.
was like, shit, you're right. And it really altered my outlook.
See, this is the kind of shit that I hear from other people whenever I float this out. And they're like, yeah, you would be a fucking better therapist than everybody else. And it fills my head and it ruins me for therapy for everybody. So there we go. Fuck you, therapists. On Mamdani. Take a Breather writes, the anti-Semitism smear might have become diluted past usefulness as seen by brazen anti-Muslim bigots making ridiculous claims of a second 9/11 and imposing Sharia law when it becomes an expansion of the already in place free bus service, currently 5 bus routes, one in each borough, and some grocery stores run by the city like Mexico having government-owned banks and pharmacies or New Hampshire that has government-owned liquor stores. There's no shortages in those cases or market catastrophe. The people who are claiming this anti-Semite is dangerous should never be listened to again. Terrorists, misogynists, anarchists, communists, fascists, and other empty derogatory terms get used against those who are not those things means that it won't be believed when it's used against those who meet the definition. What needs to be said is, this guy scares me. Insert whatever boogeyman term that will let you side with me. And stop using terms divorced from meaning. Is Mamdani a bigot towards Jewish people? Absolutely not. But that doesn't mean it will prevent individuals from making good faith arguments against populist economic arguments.
Is this a generalized statement about the pushback on Mamdani, or did we make jokes about him being anti-Semitic last week? Because I don't recall doing that.
I think this is more
this is a general thing.
A general.
Yeah. Hey, you know what? I think that's a very fair point. Like, truly, I do. I think that we should be engaging with people in good faith based on ideas. I don't like a lot of his ideas. I think a lot of his ideas are silly, but he could be and probably is a very nice man. I don't need to resort to a character attack to talk about why I think government-run grocery stores are a bad idea. But in terms of, how we engage them, let's attack ideas on the merit and not attack people. We should be judging policies based on their outcome and not the intent behind it, but we should be judging people based on their intent and not what we think the outcome of their ideas would be.
It's just been fascinating to watch the backlash against him, including there has been this whole conversation in this country about him saying globalize the intifada, which is a phrase that no one can find him actually saying. And I've just seen stunningly racist takes against him. So it's been very disappointing since he won that primary to watch Democrats and Republicans trash the guy and say things that are just very racist against Muslim people. So I think that's probably where this email is coming from, because I've been really, really disturbed by it over the last week. It's a very real thing that's happening to him, and I have seen nothing from him that suggests that he's against Jewish people in any way. But yeah, just this smear campaign against him, it's a thing to behold.
What I find weird about that is I don't think you need it. No. For many of us that remember the Cold War, when somebody goes government-owned grocery stores, we're like, oh, this is on a spectrum of eye-rolling to bad. I don't need any further information at that point. So I'm surprised that everybody else is doing it. But also, I'm assuming everybody cares about economics.
Yeah,
I think there's just a lot of Islamophobia in this country, and it's just rearing its ugly head. I think that's just a part of it.
Yeah, I mean, I will say that world events have created new dimensions in our long simmering questions about anti-Semitism and Islamophobia. And I don't want to make generalizations, because I do think that both those things are very serious and we should be taking them point by point. What I will say is I agree with you, Jen. There is some just straight out bigoted shit that's been said about him recently, specifically in regards to his Muslim faith or his heritage, coming from a very rich family out of Uganda to America, to academia. His parents were academics. But the globalize the intifada thing was because he was on a Bulwark interview leading into the interview, and they asked him what he thought of the phrase. And in one of the few missteps, he did not have a sure-handed answer to pivot away from what is a sensitive question for a guy who has to win a significant portion of the Jewish, not alienate a significant portion of the Jewish vote in the city where the most Jews live outside of Israel. And that's where he got tied to that. But he was good. I think his campaign was very good in pivoting away from it. Now he's going to have to deal with it in the general, but
I just find it fascinating though that the kid never said it. And so there's all of this coverage, and I've heard that phrase so many times connected to his name, which I think is what's happened. They're just trying to connect the phrase to his name, even though he's not out there
defending it. He indulged in defending it.
But I think
that's where it came into connection, is he was talking about intifada being used at the Holocaust Museum and stuff like that.
But I think that there's a difference between answering a question about a phrase and then kind of being portrayed as someone who's out there chanting it, which is just not the case. It's like in this episode today, I was not going to come out here and say I am not proud to be an American. This was not something I signed up to do today. I'm going to take shit for it.
Put it out.
Exactly. You did this to me.
Ashamed to be American.
So it's like when you're asked a question that's uncomfortable, you can either be brave and answer it however you see fit, or dodge it. He didn't dodge it, but it's also not something that he's claiming. It's not his phrase that he was saying. And yet, if you were to watch the coverage of him, I think it's unfairly being tied to his name because he was asked a question. And that, along with all of the racism, and it's just been pretty gross.
On that issue, I mean, he was very, very outspoken. He has his name on a statement on October, When did all this start?
October 7th, 2023.
October 7th, yeah. It was October 8th that he put out a statement that was, blaming Israel for what happened. And then he's led protests and stuff like that for which you can tie him to. In general, I think for him, the farther away he gets from it, the better he is. There's a reason why people are trying to hit him with that, because that is a negative to the coalition that he's building, and he is doing his best to try and show empathy for Jewish New Yorkers and really Jews nationally. He put out a statement about the woman who died after the attack in Boulder. That happened this week.
So sad.
82-year-old woman who was fucking firebombed by somebody advocating against the war in Gaza. But yeah, it's in general, I say in politics, if I'm going to put on my lizard man costume and just say, how do you win elections? If you say names that are too comical, you run the risk of pushing independence toward your opponent. So if you keep saying that Mamdani is an anti-Semite and a racist and blah, 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 or he's going to bring Sharia law, and then people see him and they don't see that in him, you risk pushing people toward him in the same way that when you make outlandish claims about Donald Trump and then people see him, if they don't see what you are saying about him in him, then you risk pushing people toward him because they feel that this is a smear that is applied to it. The best way that you smear your opponent is you find that exact right thing where you say like, oh, he's a racist. And then somebody sees them and they're like, oh, that seems a little racist. All right. I agree with that. I believe in that. That's how you smear opponents. The Second City Ain't writes, by no means am I a commie or a fan of my mayor of Chicago. That being said, the comparisons between Mamdani and Chicago Mayor Johnson are ridiculous and incomparable between elections mentality and what they can actually do as mayor. Chicago has an incredibly powerful mayor, no council speaker, 50 council chamber, and large autonomy from Springfield. Even with this, he has been a loser and deranged, leading my city into a bad place. I personally don't see Mamdani as having the same ability to lead like Johnson. He has a great chance to be a successful mayor because there are New York City guardrails that will keep him from going off the path like Johnson has in Chicago.
That could well be the case. I don't know much about the Chicago mayor. I think that was a Justin comment, and he can talk about that more. Most cities in the United States, at least those that are west of the Mississippi, which would not include New York City, tend to have weak mayors. Like I interviewed David Holt, mayor of Oklahoma City, last year when I was doing City Week, and he, and again, most mayors in like Texas and west of the Mississippi, the mayor is really the chairman of the board for the city council. That's effectively what they are. They're an at-large seat on the board, and they get to bang the gavel, but they don't really have unique power. And a lot of the time, too, they end up outsourcing that power to the city manager, where the city manager is effectively the CEO of the city, whereas the mayor is the chairman of the board. So that's most of them. That's not New York, which is older in its own thing. Although I do very much agree with you that the mayor of New York is significantly hamstrung by state law in a way that will stop a lot of the campaign promises that Mamdani made. Or at least campaign aspirations. I'd have to go through all of this. Maybe he said, I'm in favor of a $30 per hour minimum wage, but he didn't say he was going to enact it. I don't recall. I think he said he was going to enact that. I believe the plan was 30 by 30. I'm fairly confident New York law preempts the city's ability to raise minimum wage law. There are other things too, like we talked about the buses last week. The buses are ran by the MTA, which means it's a state agency with limited input from the city. So a lot of the stuff he wants to do just can't be done. And Governor Hochul's already said that, where she's gone, we're not going to do that. Where I think it will come down to whether he's a good mayor or not is really his ability to manage. I think having formerly lived in New York City, I don't think the mayoralty is really a good ideological crusader position. I think it's more of getting a bunch of really squabbling agencies with very disparate power brokers to work together towards some common good. He could be good at that. I don't know. To my knowledge, he doesn't have any executive experience, but he might wind up on that. But you are right. TLDR or TD, that thing. He's not going to have the ability to enact his sweeping agenda in the same way that a powerful mayor could. He's not going to, if he wins the election, come the general, he just can't go, we're socialists now, and have that be the law of the land.
Yeah, I think that this is a illustrative email. I do think that we oftentimes forget that cities have very, very, very different apportionment of power for their mayor offices. Food deserts aren't real, writes. Food deserts are an attractive problem to solve because they're intuitive, visible, and fixable. But if food deserts were the cause of the obesity issues that you described, they should be super easy to prove by empirical research. This is the kind of issue that scientists love. A ton of data, different policies in different cities, 30 years of information, etc. But this Slate article has a good summary of the problem, and here's a good quote. A 2011 study published by the Archives of Internal Medicine shows no connection between access to grocery stores and more healthy diets, using 15 years worth of data from more than 5,000 people in 5 cities.
Did we say that obesity is caused by food deserts? I don't remember saying that.
Yeah, that lack of access to fresh produce increases obesity.
We'd spoken last week where I was skeptical that you were going to be able to solve food desert problems by having government-run grocery stores. I'll say that the listener's email comports with what I have read. What I have read is that some of the principal causes of poor nutrition for working class people in food deserts are socioeconomic rather than access related. So if you are poor and you're working multiple jobs and you're strapped on time, you may not have time to prepare a meal. In which case, having a frozen meal or having junk food are going to make sense to you from a time perspective. Also, if you have very limited money, junk food is more calorically rich. You're getting more bang for your buck. So I would posit that it's more of a socioeconomic issue than an access issue. And I agree with the listener. Yeah, that seems right to me.
A former poor writes, as a person who grew up in a very low income household, I have some insight. When you have almost no money, food going bad is a major problem. And junk food almost always stores well.
Yeah.
I don't get that. Like, why can't you go to the store and get fresh fruits and vegetables? I don't understand why you have to store stuff longer than other people.
You may not have time to prepare it.
Or if you don't eat it immediately. So if you buy an apple and a bag of chips, right? And then you don't get around to eating either of them in a week, the bag of chips is the same and the apple is materially worse.
I mean, I get that. I think that one thing that I have noticed about us Americans is just, it's a cultural thing. And it's very different from how they do it in Europe, is that we like to go to the grocery store like twice a month and then buy all our shit at once and then not go back to the store, where other places, like, you'll go to the store once every 2 days, sometimes every day, and just get what you need. And I feel like that could be a cultural thing, not necessarily a socioeconomic thing, where it's like you want your food to store because you don't want to go to the store very often. But if it's just kind of like I kind of behave more European in that regard, because in this place, we just have this little shelf. And when my little niece came over, she was like, "Where's your pantry?" And I was like, "It's that shelf." And she's like, "But where's all your food?" And I was like, "That is all our food, because we'll go to the store, I don't know, whenever we need something." So I don't know if that has to do with being poor or just being an American that doesn't go to the store very often.
Yeah, somebody who works.
Could be that. Could also be that we have large box stores because that's what we've zoned for. And that if we had more mixed use zoning, we'd have more bodegas and things in other cities that would be walkable and easy to access, and therefore requiring more frequent small trips.
It's true.
Who's Working Who writes, will Jen please thoughtfully comment on the disconnect between leftists who fetishize and proclaim to be fighting for the working class, quote unquote, and actual working class voters who are more often than not voting against leftists, e.g. most of them voted for Cuomo. I ask as somebody who can't stand MAGA and actually found y'all through Brianna Joy Gray's podcast, so I'm hardly of the right. But as much as I hate MAGA and Trump, I am also sick of the unacknowledged cognitive dissonance of the left, particularly when it comes to economic issues.
So I feel like some of the terminology in here is getting back to the very opening of this show, where it's like, I don't really know what you're talking about when you say the leftists and the leftists that voted for Cuomo, because I'm sure there's leftists that voted for Mondami. Like, I don't know. So I'm not even going to engage with that. What I will talk about is the economic dissonance of Democrats, because those are the people in power. And I've been amongst them. I went to Netroots Nations in 2016. I've been to the DNC. And I also see a cognitive dissonance when it comes to the way they speak about economics. There's a kind of civil war in the party when it comes to economics. And I think it really comes down to who they want to represent. I think that the Democrats were historically the party of the working class, but they decided, and I think it's probably in the 1990s, but they decided that they wanted to take corporate money too. I've heard the phrase unilaterally disarm. They don't want to not take the corporate money and unilaterally disarm and let the Republicans have all the money. And then they think, money equals election wins. And so they take the money. And so when you look at who donates the money, the donors are the people with the money. They're the owners of society. They're owners of stocks and of businesses, and workers in that framing are their labor costs. And so if you have the owners that want to keep the labor costs low, the owners don't want to pay a lot for health insurance. The owners don't want to pay a higher minimum wage. The owners don't want their workers to unionize. And so there's a problem with trying to serve two different constituencies, where a lot of times to serve workers, you're going to have to go against the owners, and to serve the owners, you're going to have to go against the workers. And so I think what you're seeing with the Democratic Party is some of them are trying to represent both and just finding that you can't do that. You have to pick one. And so I think that's really what we're witnessing right now. We're seeing some in the party that really do represent the workers, and we're seeing some that are just failing to walk that line, because walking that line is impossible.
Keaton?
Listener, I appreciate the disparity that you're talking about, and I know what you're talking about. The most recent election is a very good example of this. You have Mamdani, who is running as the rolled-up sleeve working class guy on behalf of the working class. When you look at exit polling, low-income people voted Cuomo plus 10. It's middle-class and affluent people that voted for Mamdani overall. So there is a disconnect between the people he's purporting to represent and what they want in terms of priorities. Part of that could be pragmatism. I personally, not being a socialist, tend to view a lot of socialism as a form of cosplaying, as standing with the proletariat. But what you might find enlightening, regardless of the different viewpoints that Jen and I are putting out. I'm friends with Batya Ungar-Sargon. Jen and Justin, you both met her when we were in Chicago. She's a friend of mine. She wrote a book called Second Class. I love Batya, by the way. She wrote a book called Second Class. She went around interviewing people that were working class about what priorities they had. Now, this is anecdotal by nature. It's not, although I think she does actually have polling in there. I just don't remember any of those things from now 2 years ago. The things that stood out to me in reading the book and talking to her were that there was a much greater focus on jobs than there was on welfare. That by and large, when you get into people in the lower quintiles, they want to work hard. They value work, and that's part of why Trump and tariffs and things have resonated. I don't think they're going to work, but that's part of why they're resonating. You also have weirdly more skepticism of Medicaid and welfare, because a lot of the people that are in those cohorts know people that are abusing it. I'm not saying everybody's abusing it. I don't think that, by the way. But it's common for folks that, like me, are in upper middle class and a bleeding heart to overesteem comparatively social welfare programs and underesteem jobs, whereas people that are in the working class tend to be the other way around. But if you want to look into it, I would recommend Batya's book. I think it's a good synopsis and pretty easily digestible.
Hey, I'm writing over here, my guy. Right. I love you guys and the show is amazing, but Mamdani is not the one. I'm from New York, and if he wins, the city will turn into Detroit or London. Name me one time in history where socialism or communism has ever worked. None. Public-owned grocery stores remind me of waiting in line for your government bread. I don't understand why people want socialism and communism. Doesn't history teach us it never worked?
Well, only if you look at empirical data. If you're not looking at empirical data, it works fine. But if you look at empirical data, it hasn't really worked in the Soviet Union, East Germany, Poland, Czechoslovakia, Hungary, Romania, Bulgaria, Albania, Yugoslavia, Mongolia, Cambodia, Angola, Mozambique, Benin, Laos, or Somalia. But if we discount the 20th century, anybody. It could be anybody's game.
Okay. Point taken, Andrew. What I find interesting about this is that the idea that the government has a role in providing for people is being labeled as socialism/communism, as if even those two terms mean the same thing. They don't. I don't know of anyone, including Mondami, who's running on communism, which means no private industry at all, government running everything. No one's running on that. That's a label that's used to scare you against government investments being used for things that help you. It's like that phrase you use, public-owned grocery stores, reminds me of waiting in line for your government bread. Well, if you're starving, don't you want bread? Like, why would private sector bread for profit, be better when you're hungry? So it's like this idea that if it comes from the government, it's bad. Like that, I think, is what I'm reading in this paragraph. And I think you're using the labels of socialism and communism, which I'm guessing you don't even know what those are, to be something that's scary. And so instead of actually taking Mondani's ideas and looking at them, we're just labeling them things that they're not. We're labeling his economic ideas something that they're not. There are no communists running in any of the races that I know of, definitely not the New York primary. So it's, yeah, you can have conversations about those economic systems. And like Andrew, sure, there's data against them, but that is not the reality that we're in right now. That is not what he's running on. So stop it.
I think I know this emailer. And I'm going, because we don't do emails on emails. So I'm just going to ask the question that I'm sure I'm going to get the screaming email after this one goes live. I believe this emailer is from Central or South America and has dealt with socialist regimes in
actual
past.
Socialism. Yeah.
And so what he would say is no, these are the exact things that were said in my country, and all the same arguments you're making about how this isn't really a thing, that those were also made, and then everything fell to shit. That would be the argument that I am going to assume we will get. Emailer, tell me if I got the thrust of your email wrong.
We are not in whatever country you're from. And right now, we don't have an issue with too much socialism in the United States. Right now, we have a government, as I'm witnessing in our Congress, that is corporate captured. I'm seeing entirely too much being done for profit and being moved in that direction. Our healthcare system has middlemen that are just sucking billions and billions and billions of dollars out of our system because we allow too many things to be done for profit. We have, states that are trying to stop their water from being privatized. Like, we have a capitalism problem here in the United States. So to be like, oh, let's fear all the socialism, that's not where we are here. We have entirely too much being done for profit. We have a massive transfer of wealth happening as we speak, not only with previous bills, but with the big, beautiful bill, shifting money from most of us to the billionaires in the top, 1/10 of 1%. This is not a situation that we have to worry about right now. It's the exact opposite issue here in the United States. So we'll deal with the too much socialism when that's even a threat.
I'd like to clarify terms here, because I think part of the problem with Mamdani and a lot of the problems going on in progressive circles are conflating social democracy with socialism. These are separate things. They are different things. So quickly on the socialism communism thing, the delineation you're making, Jen, is an American delineation. The Soviets wouldn't have thought that way. Like when you read Soviet propaganda, they'll say things like, we believe we will achieve communism in the next 10 years. But they would have said they're socialists. They wouldn't have said they're communists. What we did in America is we started splitting the term to mean socialism's sort of nice, but communism's bad. But I don't know that there is that clear delineation between them economically. The definition that I think is a pretty easy one to use with socialism is the government owns and controls the means of production. I would say the grocery store one's a good example of that. That's different than a social democracy. I am a social democrat. A social democracy is a capitalist system with free enterprise, and it redistributes some of the profits in order to have a social safety net, which I'm in favor of. That's different than having the government run things, having the government run the grocery store as opposed to have vouchers or UBI or welfare or something like that. Now, Mamdani's a combination of both, but most of the socialists—
He is on tape saying that the eventual goal is to seize the means of production.
Yeah, and he's wrong about that. That's a bad thing. Like the writer's instincts are correct here. So like this is like, again, like I like Scandinavia. I like social democracy. I want to have free enterprise plus social safety net. Like I think it's a good conversation to have about How much taxes should we have versus and redistribution, all of that stuff, right? The socialism stuff, though, when we talk about the government running the means of production, I do think we've had a pretty good experiment on that. The whiz of the 20th century, and insofar as that pops up, I'm not particularly interested in relitigating it.
And finally, A Tale of Two Camera Whores writes, is Zohran to socialism what Malay is to libertarianism? I feel like we're going to have two very interesting case studies of the often opposing philosophies. I'm demanding a follow-up episode in a year with Heaton and Jen repping either politician going over what we've learned.
Well, that'll
Jen,
be enough
I
time
assume
for...
that you're going to be repping Malay.
I know, right? I don't know. We have to see if this kid even gets elected. That's also not apples to apples. Malay is the president of a country. Yeah. This guy is a city mayor.
Is in no way.
I gotta say, I don't think Mamdani can really have much effect on monetary supply, which I think is the principal of the principal cost behind inflation. So, I think
no.
as mascots, yes, I think that's true. You've got a libertarian mascot that's a head of government, and you've got what might become a municipal head of government that's a socialist mascot. So they're both going to be articulating those philosophies if he wins.
And they're unapologetic for their philosophies. That is something that it is common. And they're both very charismatic. They're charismatic and they do not mind being in front of a camera. But I don't think that in terms of how they run stuff. Let me just say this. The Republicans are bricked up, horny as hell for Mamdani to win. They desperately want him to win. Trump wants him to win so bad, he might arrest Eric Adams again. He might restart the Department of Justice case against him because they desperately want him to win, and they desperately want Mamdani to be the poster child of the Democrats, because in the midterms, the seats that are really going to decide who is in control of the House are largely either in or adjacent to New York City. And so what they want is for Mamdani to be the you can choose Mamdani or not Mamdani. And they want all of their House members to be able to run on that. That is how I see the political world. We're Not Wrong is a production of Dog and Pony Show Audio. Our editor is Will Saddleberg. On PX3, big discussion on the One Big Beautiful Bill with National Journal's Kirk Beto. That is up. No Friday episode this week because of the holiday. I'm taking the day off. I very rarely take an episode off, but I'm taking one off this week. So go ahead and check that out. Jen.
So the drones episode is out. This one is... I found it fascinating because we, spoiler alert, are not really all that prepared to defend ourselves when it comes to drones. There's some very specific things that Congress needs to do. And so in that episode, you'll find out exactly what the highest officials in DHS and the military are asking for, and where this Congress stands in prioritizing those requests.
Heaton. What's popping on the ORF?
I'm kicking off another series. I liked doing the last series on assassins. That was fun. Everybody liked that. I'm doing a series on states that weren't. And this week, what I find fun about the states that weren't is they end up being this really fascinating touchstone for conflicts that are still going on in the country. Because there are lots of places that have tried multiple times to become their own state that just didn't come to fruition. And you start looking into their grievances, you start looking into the fault lines, and you're like, oh, those are all around today. So this week on the Political Orphanage, I go over 3 states that weren't: Vandalia, also known as Westlvania, Nickajack, and Franklin. And they're all populist Appalachian would-be states. They're all people that would very much like J.D. Vance, are very much like J.D. Vance, see themselves as commoners who are living away from the powers, the halls of power, and are deeply skeptical of the elite and coasts, stuff that is ongoing in our country. But it's really fun because they're sometimes ridiculous. Like Franklin, which is kind of like Eastern Tennessee, tried to be its own state. They named themselves after Benjamin Franklin, and he thought that they were batshit crazy, so he refused to help him out. They tried to put in their constitution that you couldn't hold office if you were an attorney or a doctor. That's how populist they were. If you have a degree of higher learning or a job that looks like it, you can't hold office in Franklin. And like you start to look and go, okay, I kind of see where these fault lines are coming from culturally then when you're looking at those. So that's going to be this week. And then the bonus episode, which is going to accompany it, is modern attempts at states that have tried in the 20th century. So people might have heard of Jefferson. Jen, you're from California. Have you heard of the would-be state of Jefferson?
No.
There's these sort of perennial rumblings in Northern California and Southern Oregon of like, we should just be our own state. And they've now tried it about 3 times. And there's lots of I found all sorts of fascinating cases in America where people have tried to get a state going. It's really difficult to do it, but the desires are there. And I find those really interesting because they probe at the depths of the actual political conflicts that animate us.
Cool.
All right. Well, now that this is over, you can check those episodes out. Or if you're a patron, we have an episode coming up right for you. But until next time, for Jen Briney and Andrew Heaton, I'm Justin Robert Young. We're not wrong. The definition of pride is.
Dog and Pony Show audio.